Hello and welcome to this video about Monte Carlo and Monte Carlo simulations. So what are they and why do we use them and how do they work? So when you open up the RetireMe app, you will see two primary charts. These are just two of many, but these are the primary Monte Carlo charts, and you'll see that they're shaded and they have various lines, and the lines are a median probability at 50%, a deterministic line, which sometimes differs, but sometimes it's very close, and then P10, P25, P75, and P90, which are probability distributions on the outcomes of your model. So lower is worse and higher is better than what is the predicted central outcome or median outcome. So when planning retirement, one of the biggest challenges is obviously uncertainty. That's why we have a model. Markets go up, markets go down, inflation changes, and so life really follows a perfectly predictable path. So instead of assuming a single future, RetireMe uses these Monte Carlo simulations. It allows us to test the retirement plan against thousands of possible futures. And we can take a look at how that works. But in simple terms, Monte Carlo simulation means running the same retirement plan many thousands of times, each time using different possible market outcomes. Then in your future, there are returns. So on investment, there are KiwiSaver returns. There are a number of different factors like inflation, CPI, OCR. All of these things can materially affect the outcome of the future for you. So what the simulation does is run random variations in returns based on historical patterns with a certain volatility and certain spread. So one simulation might represent a future where the market performed very well, and you end up ending up with a lot of money at death or at 90 or beyond, much more than you would ever need. And if things go badly, then sometimes they will end short, and you will run out of money way before you have run out of life. And so every single scenario gets run with a variety of market conditions, sometimes better and sometimes worse. The higher trend lines show where investments perform strongly, and the lower lines reflect where there are tougher market conditions. But you'll notice that most results cluster around middle, while a few scenarios are the outliers above and below. So if you look at the net worth trajectory, the overall net worth, you will see that the yellow line or the orange line is the deterministic line. This is actually what we've predicted is going to happen based on the returns that you have selected. Okay, and typically the median is very close to it, because on average things will be better half the time and things will be worse half of the time. Now, why aren't they exactly the same? It's a good question. They're not exactly the same because market conditions are never completely randomly either positive or negative for you. And a classic example is tax. Think of tax. If you have a good year, you pay lots of tax. If you have a bad year and lose, you don't get a full refund. You don't get the negative. You get the you get some rebate, and you get it's some refund, but you don't get the full relief from an adverse environment. So it's stacked against you from a tax perspective, and that's why they will never be identical, amongst other reasons. There's drift, there's a few things that occur, and the calculations are quite robustly described. You can download them, and you can sort of see what the methodology is. We have a whole discussion on the maths behind it, to give you some confidence of how it's been constructed. It's very industry standardized. And so this distribution is basic probabilities of what may or may not happen against your retirement plan. So one of the key outcomes is this, what we call a success factor, or probability of success. This tells us how many of the simulated futures were able to support our retirement spending. So if, for example, 900 out of the 1,000 succeed, that gives you a 90% success rate. A higher success rate means your plan is more resilient to market volatility. If the success rate is lower, it may indicate that adjustments could improve your plan, such as saving more, retiring later, or spending more moderately, and so on. The goal isn't for it to be perfect, but rather to build a plan that performs well against a wide range of possible futures. When you look at the analysis and you dive deeply into these things, these graphs are not Monte Carlo, because there's just no ways that you could see enough information. This is the deterministic view. This is the planned view using the assumptions that you've applied to the model. So it's going to give you that orange number that you see, sorry, the orange line that you see on your particular plan. And not all plans are this close. Some are varied, but typically your orange line is going to give you a describable, traceable result. And you can always zoom in and actually have a look at the actual figures and how they've been constructed for any one of those charts. Right. So why is it important for your percentages to be high? You'd think that maybe a 50-50 is good enough. Typically it's not. In this case, there's a 43% success rate, and it looks all very good, but there's still a real chance that these people, this plan will run out before the people, the eldest retiree is even 80. And then they have quite a few years left living just on superannuation. So it's really important that you take Monte Carlo seriously, because it's not just about what happens if everything goes according to plan. It's rather, it's about how likely is my plan to succeed under real world conditions. So in RetireMe, Monte Carlo simulations, they basically run automatically every time you make an adjustment. Doesn't matter what the adjustment is. If I go into my plan and I just tweak something, like I say that actually I realize I've got $60,000 in my call account and I'm expecting, a slightly higher growth rate, immediately it changes. You can actually see it sliding, and this is doing 1,000 calculations every single time you make a small change. You can actually increase the number of simulations. The more accurate you want it to be, the higher the simulations, but it gets slower. So 2,000 simulations will take a couple of seconds. We can knock it up to 5,000 simulations, depending on the speed of your device, because it's all running on your computer. And you can see there's been a change, right? So let's observe that, the change over here. If I go down to 2,000, this is where I was ending up. Really the change is just on the upside. It's a little bit more conservative when we get down to higher simulations. The maximum that we support is 10,000. There really is a diminishing return on the work when you get higher than that. So you don't really see too much change after 5,000 or thereabouts, but you can play and do whatever you want. Anyway, so that really summarizes what Monte Carlo means and what it does. When you are downloading your blueprint, you will see the Monte Carlos are well described, and they show the different probabilities. Of course, anything can happen. The world is a very uncertain place. However, over the long term, things tend to be fairly predictable over the long term. If you have decades ahead of you, you are well placed in your plan to withstand all sorts of volatility. However, if you have a year to go, volatility can really hurt you. So early planning is always advised. One last quick little point on volatility. Under our assumptions, there is a volatility percentage. This is what we use for Monte Carlo, 8%. It's typical. It's a plus or minus 8% volatility on your particular ratios and rates. You can modify this to go up if you're more aggressive in your funds. You can go up to 10 to 12%. It makes quite a big difference if I just take it to 12% and go and look at the results. I've got it on 5,000, I think, 10,000, so it'll take a bit of time. You will see volatility does change the curves. And you can fiddle with those percentages, but typically 8 or 9% is the average that most people use. That is Monte Carlo and how it works. There's plenty of online research. There's plenty of online material explaining how Monte Carlo works in more detail, and it's fascinating when you go down this path looking at probability and statistics. I hope you enjoy your planning.